Quit eating your burgers off a coffee table. If you want to eat a burger, put it on a bar. Follow your instincts to B-dubs for the new All-American Cheeseburger. Fresh, juicy beef smashed till it's crispy around the edges, covered in gooey cheese, and stacked to the ceiling with deliciousness. And knock that baby down with a frosted beer at the bar, just like the sports gods intended. The new All-American Cheeseburger at Buffalo Wild Wings. Roar! Please drink responsibly.
Football represents something we are.
Football is like life. You gotta push.
Fantasy football is about proving that you are better than your friends.
Hold up.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Faceoff.
I'm gonna do what's best for the team.
Where fantasy meets reality.
Pure fantasy football nirvana.
And now your hosts.
Let the games begin.
Anthony Cervino and Michael Hauff.
Welcome back, folks, to the FF Faceoff. This is a podcast that's proudly brought to you by the Full-Time Fantasy Sports Podcast Network. And this is where fantasy meets reality.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best in the world!
My name is Michael Hauff. You can follow me on Twitter at the FF Realist. My partner in crime is Anthony Cervino. He can be followed the Real NFL Guru. Anthony, long time no see. How you been?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
Not bad. Had a bit of a hiatus away. The day job called, so I had a lot of work to do. Took a lot of time away from the rest of life, but back and ready to roll. I understand you've had some issues with some trolls. I hope you haven't had too many instances where you've been trying to sell Stephon Diggs onto people, and hope it hasn't been too much Cowboy talk. Right?
Well, a little bit about the Cowboys.
We'll give you a little bit of Cowboys today. We'll give you a little bit to marinate on, but, you know. And, Anthony, just to follow up from your I watched over your rant, as you want to call it. If you go to one of Anthony's previous shows, he rants about some of the folks on YouTube. Yeah, those guys. And I've been giving clearance to say this on air. My wife actually doesn't like foreplay. So, you mentioned foreplay at one point that, you know. You got to give that a little bit. And the trolls, they don't want it. They want to go right into it.
That's surprising to hear about the whole widow with the wife with the foreplay thing.
Yeah, listen, she's my wife for many reasons. So, there you go. But I was giving clearance to say that on air, so cheers to her. But, yeah, guys, if you don't like something, just skip over it. Go to the next thing. Time markers are there.
Go to the timestamp.
Or, better yet, if YouTube is bothering you that much, you can always listen to us on podcast format, too.
Absolutely.
Whichever. Then you get to avoid all that, too.
And if you are going to listen in podcast format, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe. This way, you will help us grow our fan base and our community.
There you go. Instead of looking for reasons to be upset, why don't you look for ways to better it? But there you go. Anyway, today we're going to be covering news show. We're going to be talking about some of the news that's in the NFL right now, how it's relating to the fantasy world, because, I mean, heck, we're getting right up to July here. Before you know it, fantasy drafts are going to be starting. This is going to be some stuff that you're going to need to know, so we're going to talk about it now. But first, let's get a little public service announcement from his lordship.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
All right, guys, you know the drill. If you like today's episode and subscribe to our channel, please leave us a comment saying that you have subscribed. And once you're done, we will reply back to as many as we can to show our appreciation to you. Anytime somebody likes one of our episodes, anytime somebody subscribes and hits the alert icon so you can be notified anytime that we are live or upload, anytime that you share our content and tell all of your family and your friends about the show, it helps us grow. It helps us reach each and every one of you and more of you so we can help you win and dominate your fantasy football leagues. And one more thing, before I forget, if you ever want to skip the public service announcement or skip to a certain segment or talking point in the show, like we mentioned before, all you have to do is go into the description, find the timestamp, and click on the timestamp you want to go to, but that only works on desktop format on YouTube. If you're using a mobile device, a mobile YouTube app, those timestamp links do not work. That is a YouTube problem, not an FF Faceoff problem, so please take it up with them. But it doesn't mean that the timestamps are useless. All you have to do is go to your podcast or your video window and just scroll to the time you want to go to. Everybody wins that way.
There you go. See, now, was that so bad, everybody? There you go. Anthony, are you happy you got that out of the way?
I am.
There you go. All right, wonderful. Now, by the way, I've already got my whiskey out in case you want to start talking about Stephon Diggs, which I'd just like to reiterate. I am still 110% on board with that Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs bet that we did make, by the way, just in case.
We got to start making some more bets.
Well, I'm back, so we shall. But let's get into some of the news here. Anthony, before we get to your boy Amari Cooper, another wide receiver, but over in Detroit, that being Marvin Jones. Lions beat writer Dave Burkett believes that Marvin Jones may not be long for that Lions roster. It's also important to note that he has missed the entire offseason program, but has been with dealing with a knee issue. Anthony, this is a wide receiver. Granted, last year he didn't have the greatest year ever, but prior he hit over 1,000 yards. The year prior to that, 930 yards receiving. What do we make of this? And do you think Marvin Jones could be shipped out of town, making this a permanent Kenny Galladay zone?
Well, number one, after seeing the news, Marvin Jones missed a lot of part of last season with an injury. He missed almost all of the offseason program up to this point with his injury, rehabbing. And now there are the rumors that his time in Detroit are winding down. So, before the show we were talking off air, is there a possibility that Marvin Jones can be traded, almost like we saw Golden Tate was shipped out of town last year at the trade deadline? And if Marvin Jones isn't buying into what Matt Patricia is selling, I think he could be dealt much like Golden Tate was. And it's not like they didn't bring in wide receivers. This is a team that needed wide receiver depth. Last year, they moved Tate, and they went ahead and signed Danny Amendola and Jermaine Kearse.
Yep.
So could they possibly make a move if they're mathematically out of it by the trade deadline? Yes. I just don't see a move happening before that point.
Yeah, and not that Marvin Jones can't last on a run first roster. I think you're sort of seeing that transition from some of these bigger names leaving town, being shipped out of town. Obviously, Matthew Stafford is still there, but you see the offensive line improvements. Kerryon Johnson being there. I think they're definitely shifting more towards a run first sort of offense here. And Marvin Jones may not like that, or maybe they just don't want him in that picture. So I would not be surprised if Marvin Jones does get dealt here. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, because wherever he does go, he will be an instant producer. He won't get buried on someone's depth chart. So
now, how do you feel about Marvin Jones as we stand on the Lions? He has a 4th pick in the 9th round ADP at Fantasy Football Calculator, the 40th receiver off the board. He is a pretty good value if you take in consideration the numbers he put up in 2017.
Right. And listen, you mentioned the additions of Danny Amendola and Kearse, but those aren't really guys that are going to eat too much into what Marvin Jones does. I like him at that spot. I would definitely invest in that. So, but we should keep an eye on that. Yeah, because if he goes somewhere else, that probably will creep up, I'd imagine, that ADP. But I would buy into that right now. We're not used to seeing Marvin Jones there.
The other receivers that are around him, DK Metcalf, 12th pick in the 8th round. Right. You have Sterling Shepard, 10th pick in the 8th. Larry Fitzgerald, 2nd pick in the 9th. Golden Tate, 5th pick in the 9th. Corey Davis, 7th pick in the 9th, Mecole Hardman, and then D.D. Westbrook, a 2nd pick in the 10th. Are you taking any of those players over Marvin Jones?
With those names you mentioned, Marvin Jones would be 3rd on my list of players. I forget who you were rattling off there. go back. Start from the top here quickly.
Shepard, Metcalf, Fitzgerald, Tate, Davis, Hardman.
I would debate Metcalf at that spot over him, and then Fitzgerald. Because while I believe in the Christian Kirk hype, Larry Fitzgerald is not dead. So as long as he's on that roster, he's going to be a big contributor. So I would go Fitzgerald. I would debate going Metcalf. I'd probably still go Jones. But Jones is near the top of that list, though, of those names you mentioned. Would you agree with that? Or
I would know.
Debate Metcalf.
We can segue a little bit into the DK Metcalf news, which is he's been talked up a lot by the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, that he's impressing. He looks like the player that a lot of us think he can be. And I wasn't the biggest DK Metcalf guy coming out of the combine because of how poorly he did in his agility drills. But the more you look at his opportunity and the situation in Seattle, somebody needs to catch the football, even if the Seattle Seahawks don't pass a ton.
Right.
Somebody's going to have to be there and get whatever targets there is, and they're all not going to go to Tyler Lockett.
No.
Jerron Brown is getting a ton of hype, but we saw this kid get a ton of hype in Arizona 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not.
And there's David Moore. It's almost a no-brainer for me to go DK Metcalf in that situation over everybody else.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I definitely think he's a name who is rising. I'm curious to see how much his ADP rises between now and, how much more could it go up? But there is a lot more hype to be given, as we know, in this fantasy football season. We are ready to embark on July. Really quick, though, before we go back to the Cowboys, we're about to go to them. Tyler Lockett also told the press, speaking of the Seahawks, is that he's ready for whatever happens in 2019. Finished last year as the 15th best receiver, mainly due in large part to those 10 touchdowns. With a body like DK Metcalf, big presence like that being drafted onto the Seahawks roster, I don't think I see Lockett getting another 10 touchdowns. And I think that early fifth-round ADP could be a little bit dicey. Would you agree with that?
For Tyler Lockett?
Yeah.
It is going to be – this is something I've talked about Tyler Lockett a lot on this show, right. And I have Tyler Lockett in a couple of dynasty leagues, but I am a little bit worried. He was the only top 20 receiver. Let me think about this off the top of my head. He was the only one not to have triple-digit targets. And it's not like he had like 90 targets. He had like 72. Right around that, 70 range.
71.
So he would need to have to replicate his 2018 efficiency to justify his ADP. Unless he sees an increase in targets.
Among wide receivers with 10 or more touchdowns, you had Antonio Brown with 168 targets. Devontae Adams, 169. Tyreek Hill, 137. DeAndre Hopkins, 163. Then Tyler Lockett, 71. So, he's definitely one of the lowest. The lowest was Mike Williams with 66. Just for reference, with 10 touchdowns or more. But to your point, Anthony, he's going to have to – those touchdowns are going to come down. He's going to have to get more targets. And I don't know if he gets that on a team that we already mentioned. They're going to run first. They're going to run first and throw passes later.
Oh, absolutely they will, especially with those running backs.
Exactly. So I think that fifth-round ADP, if there was a guy I could warn you on, it would be Tyler Lockett. I think he'll still produce, but don't bank on 10 touchdowns again. So, but Anthony, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's get to your Dallas Cowboys, which, by the way, I'm going to regret saying this, but have you found a sound drop for God, it's killing me. Jimmy Johnson saying, "How about them Cowboys?"
No, but I can.
But I'm just saying it. I think it would add to the flavor of the show if I could help you out. Yeah. Anyway,
that's whatever. Next on the list.
Well, you Google that. I do want to throw out there that Amari Cooper has told the press that he wants to be a Cowboy for a long time. And what really perked up the ears of some of us fantasy football folks, he wants to go for 2,000 yards receiving in 2019. Some rather bold calls there by one Amari Cooper. Anthony, how are you feeling about Amari Cooper headed into, we're getting into the summer months here of this fantasy football season. He's currently sitting late in the third round with an ADP. Half-point formats, of course. That's the official scoring of the FF Faceoff. Right around guys like Jay Green. How are you feeling about Amari Cooper?
I'm buying Amari Cooper, and his ADP right now, 4th pick in the third round, sandwiched in the middle of Keenan Allen and AJ Green, like you said. His ADP was a little bit higher a few months ago, so it has fallen a little bit, which works in my favor, or anybody who's trying to get their hands on Amari Cooper. Not only isn't he a contract year, which I love contract year players because players are human, and anytime you put an incentive in front of a human, most of the time, if they're wired correctly, they are going to shoot for that incentive. If you're a salesman, I was in sales for 10 years, and there was a sales bonus to sell 3 cars on a Saturday, you better, damn right, I'm going to go get that $500 bonus for selling 3 cars. Or I'm going to at least do my best to reach that. And that's why I buy contract players more times than not. We saw Amari Cooper have a huge, second half of the year last year in Dallas after he came there from Oakland. I know that we had a little bit Twitter debate with one of your followers, one of our followers, for Amari Cooper tweet you put out.
Yeah. Basically speaking to the how would you expect Amari Cooper to be more consistent in a first full season with the Dallas Cowboys if he's never really done it before? And he went on to say he didn't really do it much with the Cowboys. He put up some promising numbers with the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm trying to find my response because I went into those Cowboys numbers a little bit.
I mean, listen, I'm buying into the narrative of a contract year, and folks can roll their eyes at that just to have a talking point to, bash somebody for whatever for their thoughts. But I think there's definitely something to a player entering a contract year. Anthony mentioned it himself. It's, everybody's human. If somebody told you, hey, if you do this at your job, we're going to give you a $500, $1,000 bonus, you're going to bust your ass and get it done. So I think Amari Cooper does the same, not for 2,000 yards, but whatever.
In 11 games with Dallas, Amari Cooper scored at least 13.5 PPR points, including the playoffs. 6 of the 7 went for at least 15.5 points, and 2 he went for at least 38 points.
Yeah, he had that one huge
game. He ended the regular season on a terrible note from weeks 15 to 17, where he had 3 single-digit outings in a row. But then in the playoffs, he went off for like 17, 18 points in each game.
Well, he had that one huge game towards the end. Where was that? Yeah, that was that game against the Eagles. 217 yards, 3 touchdowns. Remember that? That was back in week 12. So that had to help out somebody. So I think you're going to get more consistency rather than boom or bust from Amari Cooper. I think that's okay to think that too.
You can't handle the truth.
I don't believe Amari Cooper's actually going to go for 2,000 yards.
No, of course not.
But I like that he is setting the goal high. This is the kind of competitiveness I want to see out of NFL players or any type of athlete. You want to see them set goals and try to attain them.
Right. And I mean, he's obviously going to lead the team in receiving yards. There's some faces there, but no one's really going to challenge him for the total yards in the season for the Dallas Cowboys this year.
No.
Right. So let him dream big, let him play for that big contract, and then let him help you win some fantasy games. So I'm buying into the Amari Cooper hype, and if you're not, then fair enough. I'll take him. So there you go. But that's enough of the Dallas Cowboys, Anthony. You could do that all day. Let's go to Tampa Bay a little bit here. Running back Ronald Jones, he's looking to get back on the right track. He is currently sitting in half-point formats, right around with an ADP about mid to late 8th round right now. I mean, listen, Anthony, you could speak to this, but he came out of USC last year. There was a little bit of hype around him, but not as much compared to some of the other names out there, and he absolutely sunk like a brick. Well, I'm saying some people were a little excited.
There was some hype.
There was some. I'm saying some. but I'm saying minimal compared to some of the other backs coming out. But he, no matter how much hype he had, whatever you want to call it, he sunk like a brick on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers depth chart, was barely used. But I mean, Anthony, new coach in here, hopefully a right frame of mind. That depth chart is not insurmountable. I mean, I know you love Peyton Barber, but Peyton Barber, Andre Ellington, these are names he can surpass, no?
He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna
Yeah.
He's gonna puke!
Ronald Jones should be able to pass these guys on the depth chart. They just released, didn't they just release Justin Wilson or one of those other running backs they had lingering on the bottom of their depth chart?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
There's not much there.
No.
I still believe they are in the market to trade for a running back. And this is something I've felt for the duration of the offseason. Because outside of Andre Ellington, I don't think they have that pass-catching running back that we've seen Bruce Arians use in the past. And I don't know if I can bank on Andre Ellington doing it. It's not Peyton Barber. Charles Sims is long gone. So what's next? I don't know how good of a receiver Ronald Jones is either. So to me, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are absolutely in the market to trade for a back.
But all right, let's just say they stay where they currently are. Let's say they don't, because listen, we, not just you and me, but the fantasy community, football enthusiasts were calling for the Buccaneers to make additions once the free agency market opened. You know, Le'Veon Bell with Duke Johnson. We hoped for all these names to end up in Tampa Bay. None of it happened. So let's just say that they stay stubborn and they stand pat. Do you think, with the way the depth chart's constructed now, who do you think could be the lead running back in Tampa Bay? Would you bet on Ronald Jones, or would you stick with your boy Peyton Barber?
I would probably bet on Ronald Jones just for the sake of draft capital at this point. And,
right,
you know, but I don't know if I'm going to trust him on my fantasy team.
No,
I wouldn't take him to fill a starting spot or a flex spot.
Okay,
I'm only going to take Ronald Jones as depth.
Okay, well, right now he has late ADP late in the 8th round in half-point formats. Do you think at that point you would be willing to take a shot at him or no? Or is he going to have to sink lower for you?
He needs to sink lower. I mean, look at the names around him, whether you're talking about Kareem Hunt, who could be a second-half league winner, Miles Sanders, who, you know, he's dealing with the hamstring injury. They say he's going to be fine. I think he'll be in the mix a little bit on third down, spelling, you know, Jordan Howard, and then boom, there's Jordan Howard going right after Ronald Jones. I would probably go Jordan Howard over Ronald Jones.
I would definitely go with that.
From what I know now.
Yeah.
But I need to see how Ronald Jones plays in training camp, because training camp ultimately buried Ronald Jones last year.
That it did. But all right, as long as we're talking about running backs, you mentioned the idea of the Buccaneers being in the market for a running back, which we've been saying since February, really, since before the confetti even fell at the Super Bowl. But might as well bring up now then 49ers beat writer Matt Miyoko. He believes that one of the running backs, that being Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, or Matt Breida, whatever podcast you go to, they may say his name differently. He believes that one of those running backs will be a healthy scratch during the 2019 season. Anthony, to me, I understand that Matt Breida filled in, and he did well with that Niners offense, as long as he wasn't limping around like a Civil War survivor on the field. But Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, if you're giving one of those guys a healthy scratch, I'd have to think it'd be Matt Breida. So, two-part question. Are you getting a little bit worried about drafting one of these third or fourth Niner running backs? And do you think that maybe the Buccaneers, perhaps, or any team, could be in the market for one of these guys?
It is hard for me to believe that all four of these 49ers running backs are going to be on the roster in week one. You're paying Jerick McKinnon a ton of money. You're paying Tevin Coleman who has a previous rapport playing in a Kyle Shanahan system. Breida looks very durable, looked good in the offense. And then Raheem Mostert, he is one player that is going to play every week because he is an excellent special teamer.
Teams. Yep. Absolutely.
The odd man out is Breida or McKinnon.
I've been saying Breida for months, so.
If I think somebody is moved, but would it surprise me if they just kept the entire stable to anticipate for injuries? Probably not.
That was the one thing I was going to mention, yeah.
Am I buying any of these running backs? Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't have many shares of the 49ers running backs in any format right now, except McKinnon, who I have in Dynasty from last year.
Right.
But, in Reed, it's just so hard because if they are going to play a hot hand, then who do you trust?
Well, all signs point to currently them giving a majority of that work to Tevin Coleman. It's been believed, at least, if you read the reports, that he's going to be the main guy out there for what that's worth in a Shanahan offense.
If you remember, I was talking up Tevin Coleman last year, and you were burying him. I was the one who said he's going to be a 49er. And you were bashing him.
Right.
Do you trust Tevin Coleman? Do you trust those reports? Because Tevin Coleman looks like Tevin Coleman last year.
Right. The way I would respond to that is this: do I trust Tevin Coleman? Not completely, but do I trust Kyle Shanahan to give me fantasy production in whom he believes is his number one running back? Yes. So if that's Tevin Coleman, then by default, I believe in Tevin Coleman. If you get that answer at all.
No, I do. I get it.
So, yeah. If they're telling me he's going to be the number one guy, that's everything I'm seeing. I believe that Shanahan will go for that in week 1, week 2, week 1 against Tampa Bay. I believe he will gun for that. But then it's going to be a matter of, will Tevin Coleman produce? Will he be what we saw last year when folks were really expecting him to break out in what was a contract year? And he kind of fell short without Devonta Freeman around. So, yeah, there's a lot. But I was going to mention.
I don't know how much of it was Tevin Coleman's fault.
Right.
The offense, the defense was, they were banged up horrible. Bad. They were playing from behind. And then, they had issues with their interior offensive line all season long, especially at the guard position. So how much of it was Tevin Coleman and how much of it was situation?
Yeah. So, again, I say this also with the understanding that the 49ers make a lot of team-friendly contracts, which is good for them. But if they were to deal away one of these running backs, I would think Matt Breida would be the odd man out. And mainly because, like you mentioned, Mostert is a special teams guy. But also, 49ers love themselves some injuries, so maybe hang on to them and then deal with the healthy scratch, I guess. But so there's that. But I do think that if you're drafting, you should put your stock in Tevin Coleman and then Jerick McKinnon, if you're asking me. Anthony, let's go over to the Baltimore Ravens here. Their beat writer, Jeff Zerbiak. Is that how you pronounce it? Zerbiak. Okay. Wally Zerbiak. Sure. He's reporting that tight end Mark Andrews looks bigger, stronger, and faster this offseason. This on top of the news we heard about a month ago of Hayden Hurst putting on whatever it was, about 20 pounds of muscle, 15, 20 pounds of muscle, trying to live up to that Triple H moniker, I suppose, Anthony. But here's the thing, man. Like, right now, Mark Andrews is listed as the 20th tight end going.
Who wouldn't want to live up to Triple H, number one?
Okay. Back to the Ravens tight ends, please. Let's save that for another day. Let's save that for a private text conversation. Right now, Mark Andrews listed as the 20th tight end going off the board in the 14th round, that being in 12-team half-point drafts. I mean, between that, I would call it a stacked position, honestly, tight end. I think you can get some real value late. Who do you trust in this Baltimore depth chart here at tight end, and do you even care?
I care because of Lamar Jackson. and the known struggles Lamar Jackson has had and could be having, still throwing the football downfield, which means the tight end position in Baltimore could be extremely valuable. And I'm going to stick with the hot hand, who is Mark Andrews, over the draft capital in Hayden Hurst. Now, I know that it could take a couple of years for a tight end to, really get into the mix and break out. So this could be the year for Hayden Hurst. And I don't mind taking a chance on Hayden Hurst in a dynasty draft and a dynasty startup. But in redraft, it's going to be Mark Andrews. And I don't think I'm going to blink an eye about it.
Yeah, I'd probably go Mark Andrews as well. Also, interesting to note, Hayden Hurst was the guy that was, they were both drafted the same year. And Hayden Hurst was the guy who was drafted first, the first round, 25th overall pick in the 2018 draft. So, but yeah, I would think Mark Andrews would emerge. But to me, there's enough depth at this tight end position where I would rather take some chances on some other names and not have to worry about who's going to be the lead guy over there. I mean, Anthony, a guy I touted for God knows how long last year, Jimmy Graham, he's currently sitting 14th round.
Can you believe I'm buying into Jimmy Graham in a big way this year?
Yeah, I get. Well, no, only because now I hate him. So there you go. So that's usually how it turns.
I mean, the ADP. The only reason why I killed everybody for Jimmy Graham last year was because of his ADP, and now his ADP is in the 14th round.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
He had 91 targets, only 10 red zone targets. If that red zone number can go up a little bit, and he scores a few more touchdowns, all of a sudden, Jimmy Graham is going to drastically outperform his current ADP. And he is entering his second year with Aaron Rodgers, which is big, according to those reports between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers not getting along. Aaron Rodgers doesn't like new people. Well, he's not new anymore.
Right. All right. So there you go. So there's that. Anthony, let's get into a little bit of Redskins talk here. I don't know if this is anything more than a feel-good story, but we'll just mention it. I mean, Alex Smith has told the press that he intends to play football again. So there's that. I mean, listen, if Alex Smith showed up, if I'm the Redskins, if I'm Jay Gruden, and if Alex Smith shows up and if he tells me I could play, then he's already got a leg up on Case Keenum. But, I don't think it's going to be enough for him to Dwayne Haskins is going to be the Redskins quarterback. Whether it happens in week 1 or happens in week 4, he's going to be the starting quarterback. So, God bless you, Alex Smith. I don't know where you'll play, but yeah, maybe the XFL, like Anthony mentioned. Anthony, anything to say about Alex Smith at all? Or can we just move on?
I mean, hopefully he gets back to, normal and he's healthy, but his days in the NFL are done.
Right. Which, if he can make it back, then salute to him. That was a horrific leg injury. So, but there you go. Really quick, though, some other Redskins stuff. Jay Gruden told the press that Trey Quinn has taken over the inside slot role. This is something we kind of heard some whispers about early in the offseason, back in March or so forth. We'd heard a little bit about Trey Quinn. We heard a little bit more about him now. I'm buying into this hype. If there's deep leagues, like we're going to talk about later, we're going to talk about some other number 3 receivers and so forth on teams, who are a little bit lower in the depth chart, not top of the food chain. Trey Quinn's a guy I would rather buy into than some of those other names that we're going to discuss. But Anthony, are you buying into this Trey Quinn hype? I know you own him, I believe, in a dynasty league, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I do, and he was getting a lot of hype right when the offseason began, and especially after Jamison Crowder moved on, and that slot position in Washington has been pretty fruitful for PPR fantasy owners in the past. I mean, look at the target shares for Jamison Crowder when he was healthy. From 2015 to 2017, of course, last year he only played in 9 games, but in 2015 he had 78 targets, 2016 99, and in 2017 103. If you can get those type of targets, if Trey Quinn can get anywhere between 75 and 100 targets, and you can get him for nothing right now in PPR. His ADP is, in fantasy football calculator, he's not even on the radar. He's not even on the list. He's going after the 68th receiver, who is Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah, if you're working drafts with your best pals and they aren't the biggest fantasy minds, and if it's a deep draft, I mean, you may even just be able to get Trey Quinn, not even at the end of your draft, because I believe he was Mr. Irrelevant, if I'm not mistaken. You don't even have to wait till the end of your draft. You can get him off the free agency board, off the waivers. So definitely a guy to keep in mind. He could be a guy that when it gets to week 5, week 6, people could say, "How the hell did you get that guy?"
And you could tell him because you listen to the FF Faceoff.
Anthony, well, yeah, you could tell him that, damn it. And then tell him to leave a review. And tell them to not be a troll because Anthony's going to tell him to get off his lawn. Listen, Dolphins wide receiver, Albert Wilson, a guy I like. He could miss the beginning of training camp with that hip issue. Listen, now his season ended after week 7 last year, but he was a top 10 receiver in 2 out of those 7 games. Anthony, I'm buying in to Albert Wilson. We mentioned that Trey Quinn isn't even on the board and fantasy football calculator. Now there's Albert Wilson, at least as far as I could see.
He is 61st receiver, 3rd pick in the 14th round.
Well, he didn't pop up when I looked him up, so there you go. But there you go. But I'm buying into Albert Wilson. What says you about one Albert Wilson?
I like Albert Wilson a lot, and if you look at the other receivers on the Dolphins depth chart,
right.
Devontae Parker, been there, done that.
Yeah.
Kenny Stills, not a wide receiver 1, doesn't fit the profile, and I know that Albert Wilson doesn't really fit the profile either, but he is probably the best of the group, and at least the most versatile when you look at what he can do in the open space. He can line up all over the field in the slot, can take carries as a running back. So, yeah, I am buying Albert Wilson. The one thing that is setting me back a little bit is the fact that the latest report, as you mentioned, he could miss the start of camp with the hip.
Yeah.
So,
definitely something to keep an eye on.
Is he a candidate for the PUP list, which would take him out of action for the first, 6 games of the year?
Right. Yeah. Well, we still have a ways to go before we get to that point, but definitely something to keep an eye on, especially if you are somebody like me and Anthony who are high on one Albert Wilson. So keep that on your radar. Anthony, Steelers beat writer, Mark Caboli.
Yeah.
You say tomato, I say tomato. He believes that Ryan Switzer could make the 53-man roster over Eli Rogers. Anything, Anthony?
I like Ryan Switzer. He ended up, I believe, 5th on the Steelers in targets last year.
Right.
I think he does have a rapport with Big Ben. And, Big Ben is going to be looking for that new favorite pass catcher. Ryan Switzer is also an asset on special teams, and I think he will make this team, and he should make this team.
But really, we're not talking about any fantasy relevancy, right?
Not really, right? Maybe?
No, I'm saying no.
I mean, you have Juju, and, one of my biggest but my biggest, I guess you can call it a hot take, is that I believe Vance McDonald is going to finish number 2 on the Steelers in targets.
Yeah.
So after Vance, you have, I think it's going to be a widespread of targets between Moncrief, James Washington, Deontay Johnson, the rookie, and Ryan Switzer.
Well, let's not forget, apparently Dante Moncrief is a slam dunk.
Again.
Number 2 receiver.
Again.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm buying into that. Not sure I'm buying into that, Anthony. They may think that right now, but they won't think that in September. So,
Vance McDonald.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I would definitely buy. And that's speaking to something about earlier with the depth at the tight end position. Vance McDonald is currently in half-point formats. He's the 9th tight end coming off the board. Yes, 9th tight end coming off the board just after Jared Cook. Definite value there with Vance McDonald. Anyway, moving on. Bears running back Tariq Cohen does not expect his role on the team to change following the additions of David Montgomery and Mike Davis this offseason. I never suspected that it would. But, Anthony, if you could own one of these running backs Are you running to Tyreek Hill, or are you David Montgomery guy?
Tyreek Hill.
I meant Tariq Cohen. Tyreek Hill. Well, I mentioned Tyreek Hill because he's coming up in our notes, but Tariq Cohen. Are you a Tariq Cohen guy, or are you a David Montgomery guy?
I'm probably going to lean the rookie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. He can do more. I feel
Right.
like he, after all these off seasons of Matt Nagy saying, nope, Jordan Howard's not really the guy, or maybe he is the guy, we don't know, and then they move on from him and they get the guy. David Montgomery, he is the guy we want. I have a feeling they're going to play him a ton.
My only problem with David Montgomery right now,
Is ADP?
That ADP's got to calm down. I mean, I'm looking half-point formats right now.
It's ridiculous.
He's listed middle of the fourth round.
I can't do it.
I mean, there's names after him like Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, Tariq Cohen. I mean,
in dynasty rookie drafts, absolutely.
Sure.
But
Done.
in your redraft leagues,
right.
I mean, you just mentioned the names. My guy, and I know you hate it, is Kenyon Drake.
No, I don't hate it anymore.
Love Kenyon Drake.
I hated it last year. I don't hate it this year. I hated it last year with Adam Gase, as you know. So that was my reason for hating on Kenyon Drake, not because of Kenyon Drake. Nobody understood that. People thought I was personally attacking the guy, so everybody cried every time I made a tweet.
Are you down on Le'Veon Bell?
No, because I think Le'Veon Bell is a different type of athlete than Kenyon Drake. We're talking about a different class of running backs, as far as I'm concerned.
But they signed Ty Montgomery. They have Elijah McGuire. They signed Bilal Powell, who didn't have a neck 3 months ago. I mean,
this is my answer whenever you mention Ty Montgomery to me on the show.
Oh, come on. We do have some news in the notes. Let's just jump. Ty Montgomery,
yes,
Jets beat writer Brian Costello is reporting that Ty Montgomery has had a strong spring.
You should find a sound drop that says, "Who cares?" I mean, Ty Montgomery, really? Are we gonna? We're not gonna have a long discussion about Ty Montgomery, are we?
No.
Okay. All right. I just, okay. Let's forget that ever happened. But anyway, just to backtrack on that, to sum it up, David Montgomery's ADP needs to calm down. And my own public service announcement: I do not hate Kenyon Drake in 2019. So. There you go. So,
but you do hate Ty Montgomery.
I do hate Ty Montgomery. Yes. That is true. So there you go. Anthony, let's go to the New York Football Giants. That being Giants wide receiver Corey Coleman is currently the front runner for the number 3 wide receiver spot heading into training camp. For those who are concerned, he hasn't visited the end zone since December of 2017. I have little to no interest in the Giants' third receiver. Listen, we all make fun of the Giants for their draft pick and so on and so forth, and the way they've conducted themselves over the last 2 years or so. But there's still some fantasy relevancy on this team, and I like Evan Ingram to bounce back. I like Golden Tate. I like Sterling Shepard. I can't go any further past that because let's not forget Saquon Barkley commands targets as well. Are you expecting any fantasy relevancy out of a third wide receiver with the Giants?
Probably not. Corey Coleman, I'm, I guess, a little surprised that he's even in the league right now. I get that he is a former first-round pick, 15th overall.
I think that's the bigger news. I think that's the bigger news. Not that he's shooting for the number 3 wide receiver for the Giants. The fact that he's still in the league. I think that's the bigger news.
But what else do they have on the Giants? Cody Latimer.
Right. So it's almost like a by default. He's their number 3 receiver, and that's fine. But the number 3 receiver for the Giants isn't going to command much fantasy football attention, nor should he. So
barring injury,
yeah. No, because look at what's happened before with Giants wide receivers when Odell Beckham would go down. Did any of those names really pop on the radar and win anybody any fantasy titles?
No.
So I think if there's an injury, I just think that means that you need to buy even more into Evan Ingram. If there's an injury to one of those top Giants wide receivers. So there you go. So sorry to be doom and gloom, but no, I'm not buying into Corey Coleman. Here we go. This is where my head was at earlier. Tyreek Hill. Chiefs beat writer Nate Taylor is reporting that the team believes that Tyreek Hill could be suspended by the NFL as soon as next month. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony, he did meet with the NFL, right? Correct? That happened already?
He either met or he's meeting with them on Wednesday.
Okay, right. I mean, Anthony, this is your guy. I would imagine a suspension of some kind is coming.
Yeah, I believe he's going to be suspended. It's just a matter of how long. I did a lot of work on Tyreek Hill this offseason on, the player profiler draft kit for our own show. Tyreek Hill's been a big talking point. And I'm kind of building in my projections of 8 games. It could be 6, it could be 10. So I'm factoring in somewhere in the middle, 8 games missed. Similar to how I am projecting, obviously, with Kareem Hunt. So Tyreek Hill, we've seen his ADP fluctuate. His ADP has been in the tank in the double-digit rounds, and now it is creeping back up into the single-digit rounds. Where are you comfortable taking Tyreek Hill, considering he could miss anywhere between 6 to 10 games? And like I said, to be safe, I'm using 8.
I'm not comfortable taking him at all, period. Because of that.
Really? Still?
I would rather have. See, I'm of this mindset a lot when I'm putting together my fantasy roster. I understand that Tyreek Hill deserves to be drafted. I would much rather draft my team with knowing that these guys are going to be there. Obviously, we can't anticipate injuries, but we're talking about suspensions. Unless he drops that far in ADP. If he falls like a brick, and if I could scoop him up and then know that I've got a trade chip maybe by the middle of the season, like a Kareem Hunt should be a guy that you can draft later as a trade chip, but his ADP is still probably not where I want it to be. That's my problem with these guys. If you're suspended, I need to put together a team to win now. So I don't know if I think I'd let him be somebody else's problem.
I don't know. I mean, I did a mock draft for Fantasy Pros the other day,
right?
With a couple, 11 other guys. It was a PPR redraft mock draft, and I ended up with Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. And at first, I didn't like it. The Fantasy Pros grade they buried me a little bit, but just think about getting these players back in Week 9.
All right, but what is it?
And all of a sudden, you have Kareem Hunt, who is going to have fresh legs. The Browns, we believe, are going to be in the playoff hunt, which means they could taper back Nick Chubb a little bit. Nick Chubb, doesn't give you a ton in the passing game, so we know that Kareem Hunt will get at least that, or we believe that. And then Tyreek Hill, let's say he goes back to Pat Mahomes and that Chiefs offense in Week 9. You have 2 players that can possibly win you a league. If you're a 4, if you're a 4-4 fantasy team, a 3-5 fantasy team, then you get these 2 players back for the stretch.
I would be more excited about getting Tyreek Hill back than I would Kareem Hunt, just because of what Kareem Hunt is walking into. Like you said, Nick Chubb. What if Nick Chubb is an absolute beast? What if they're throwing it enough where they don't need to really taper him off? Sure, Kareem Hunt will eat into that workload a little bit, but they don't need to taper him off. I would be more excited about Tyreek Hill returning to Pat Mahomes than I would Kareem Hunt returning.
But I got Hunt in the 10th.
And right. And so I was going to ask you as a follow-up question, what did the rest of your do you know what the rest of your roster look like, or do you not have that anymore?
I do have it. It's I think I ended up with Zeke. I ended up with
no shit. You ended up with Zeke?
I know, right? Seems surprising, right?
Yeah. Really, I almost fell out of my chair.
Let me pull up this roster because I actually like. The more I look at this team, the more I like it. And it was one of those YOLO drafts where it's like, you know what? Let me take a couple chances. It's a mock draft, and I've been trying a couple of different things out.
Well, while Anthony pulls that up, I do want to quickly mention there's not much to discuss here, but Titans GM John Robinson does want Marcus Mariota to avoid unnecessary hits. That would be because he is about as durable as a wet paper towel. So I believe he put on some weight, Marcus Mariota. We'll see if he stays more healthy, but Ryan Tannehill is right around the corner. So, and yes, that could mean something if Marcus Mariota cannot stay healthy. But Anthony, while I mentioned that, do you have that?
Yeah, I do.
Ready? All right,
and I didn't. From the 1.5, obviously Zeke wasn't there, although he is dropping here and there. I took David Johnson.
Okay.
Mike Evans, Damian Williams, Kenyon Drake, Cooper Kupp, Andrew Luck, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, a little bit of a reach, Austin Hooper. Now, this is PPR, a lot of targets here. And then Kareem Hunt, DK Metcalf, Humphreys, CJ Anderson, Delaney Walker.
Okay. All right. I'm on board.
Yeah, right? And then Rams defense, last pick.
If you know what you're doing in drafts, then sure, then I endorse the idea of taking a Tyreek Hill, man. But
my starter picks were filled out. I have Mecole Hardman, who's going to play the games that Tyreek Hill misses, and then
if you could fill out that starting roster, then fine.
Yeah, and that's the rule of thumb. Don't take these players until you have your starting players filled out.
Also depends on bench spots too. How many bench spots do you have? Are you going to need any? Are you going to need any early where that's going to potentially be burning a hole on your roster there? It's going to mess you up from making any other kind of moves. So that's also something to keep an eye on. Or just ask your commissioner for a bigger bench. Anyway, Anthony, Colts head coach Frank Wright is very encouraged with Devin Funchess with his performance during the offseason program. Listen, I couldn't have despised Devin Funchess anymore in Carolina. In Indianapolis, I'm a big fan. I do think we see a regression from Eric Ebron's touchdown output, and I think that goes to Devin Funchess. I've said it before, I'll say it again. So I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing here out of Indianapolis, that it's supporting my thoughts anyway. Are you still on the Devin Funchess bandwagon in 2019?
I am. A lot of it, what you said about him upgrading from the Panthers supporting cast and quarterback to the Colts supporting cast and quarterback, it's going to be T.Y. Hilton commanding the top coverage, and all of a sudden Devin Funchess, who was commanding top coverage in Carolina, he is getting the number 2 corner in most situations. And he should win those battles, especially in the red zone. He is a big body wide receiver, 6'4", 232 pounds. He will be factor in the red zone, and that will take away from Eric Ebron, who is a big sell right now. Who else is going to take away from Eric Ebron? Jack Doyle, because he appears to be progressing well coming off the hip injury. And, of course, Paris Campbell is going to be involved in this offense.
Right.
So I am going to buy Devin Funchess.
By the way, Devin Funchess currently in half-point formats going late in the 11th. Names like D.D. Westbrook, Curtis Samuel, who I like, Deshaun Jackson, Anthony Miller, another good name. But then Devin Funchess. I mean, for that price, why not?
Oh, absolutely.
So, Anthony, anything else to mention? I think I cut you off there. Were you all set?
I was going to say, he's another player, although he was a free agent this year, he is in a contract year again because he signed a 1-year deal, $13 million max incentive with the Colts. So he is not only playing for that max incentive, $13 million, but he's playing for another contract, and I don't believe it's going to be with the Colts. I think he's going to have a big year, and another team is going to overpay for him.
Yeah. All right, there you go. A couple more things to discuss. 3 more things here. Packers head coach Matt LaFleur believes that, has suggested, that Aaron Rodgers will not have complete control of the line of scrimmage. Listen, you draft Aaron Rodgers is going to produce. Enough with the drama. Aaron Rodgers is going to be fine. Matt LaFleur is going to be fine. The Packers are going to be fine. They'll produce for you for fantasy. Anthony, do I need to read anything else into this, or can we just move on?
I just think it's funny.
Like, listen, we get it. Aaron Rodgers doesn't like to work with other people. We get it. He's a hardhead. He's not very...
If he didn't respect a Super Bowl winning head coach like Mike McCarthy, how the hell is he going to get along with LaFleur?
But, just... whatever. All right.
And I love Aaron Rodgers. I'm buying Aaron Rodgers. I did the bounce back quarterbacks, and he was in my bounce back quarterback list because Aaron Rodgers only threw 25 touchdowns last year, and he throws 30 in his sleep when he plays 16 games.
Right. Listen, did you ever apply for a job where they have that questionnaire and then it says to you, do you find that you work well with others? Well, Aaron Rodgers is that one guy who's going to say no. I don't work well with others, but it's fine. He still produces. And yeah, he's suggesting that he's not going to have full control at the line of scrimmage. Okay, so what does that mean? He has a little bit of control. He has more often than not. He has control.
He's going to do what he wants to do.
Who the hell cares? Aaron Rodgers is going to produce for you for fantasy. Just invest in the guy and you'll be fine. For love of God, enough with the drama. I can't take drama. Too much drama. By the way, I haven't had a chance to mention this because I haven't been on my season. Drama on Twitter between people discussing talking points is just absurd. Grow up. Anyway, as we close out the show, Patriots beat writer Mike Girardi is reporting that Sony Michel has been running at full tilt. So there you go. That's good to know. Listen, he walked into the Patriots locker room with a lot of question marks after his time in Georgia with some bad knees. I have a feeling that unfortunately is probably going to be a thing that's going to, it's never going to fully go away for him, I don't believe. But good to hear that he's doing well. Anthony, anything to mention on Sony Michel?
A little bit worried at his current ADP right around the fourth round.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Kenyon Drake over Sony Michel. If Leonard Fournette falls, I'm going to go Leonard Fournette over Sony Michel. Leonard Fournette could be one of those players that fall. The Patriots used a pretty significant draft capital to take Damian Harris. There are already reports suggesting Damian Harris is going to push Sony Michel for early down reps. So, yeah, I'm a little bit worried about taking Sony Michel right now in fantasy football.
All right. Yeah, I agree. It's the ADP that starts to make things a little tricky with these guys. And just remember, while you look at Fantasy Football Calculator, it is very helpful. But remember who you're drafting with. Because if you're drafting with your home bases over in, say, New England, Sony Michel may even go earlier.
Yeah, ADP is not gospel.
It's not right.
It's a guide.
It's right. It's a guide. Perfect. Last note here, Falcons head coach Dan Quinn told the press that Devonta Freeman has looked like himself this offseason. Anthony, I'm a guy who thinks Devonta Freeman bounces back this year. Currently sitting late in the mid to late third round ADP here, just behind Aaron Jones and just in front of Josh Jacobs. How are you feeling about Devonta Freeman headed into this year?
I think he has the opportunity to bounce back. I think Dirk Cutter is going to want to establish a run. But considering the players around him, Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack, Aaron Jones, I might be more inclined to roll with like a Marlon Mack or even a Leonard Fournette over Devonta Freeman right now. And I am one of the few who buys Leonard Fournette because of how valuable he is to the team and also how productive he is when he does play in a game.
Yeah. Well, now you have to worry about two things with Leonard Fournette. It's one, staying healthy, and two, not acting like an idiot. But that being said, I do like myself some Leonard Fournette, which normally I don't in the past. So a little bit of a different FF realist this year. Buying into Kenyon Drake, buying into Leonard Fournette. But back to Devonta Freeman, I'm buying into Devonta Freeman. And I think he may even slip a little bit further here on some of these draft boards. And I would gladly take him, especially if he starts slipping a little bit. Definitely a name to watch as the summer moves on. So, Anthony, anything else to mention before we ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're listening right now in podcast format, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Alexa, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, and especially you Apple Podcast users or any user of a podcast platform that allows you the opportunity to leave us a 5-star rating and a 5-star review, please subscribe to the FF Faceoff. Please leave us a 5-star rating and a 5-star review telling everyone why you love the show and why we are the best damn fantasy football podcast where fantasy meets reality. Because the more subscriptions, ratings, and reviews that we get, the more people we can reach. And in the end, we want to help each and every one of you win fantasy football championships, dominate your leagues, and absolutely positively crush the competition. We have had a few reviews come in, so we thank you for them, and we hope to see a lot more now that the regular season is approaching. And of course, we will maintain the culture of winning we've built here in the FF Faceoff for almost 3 years since our inception and over 200 episodes. Mike, as always, take us home.
That's it. Well, it was nice to be back. Good time talking. We're going to get more out to you. And again, we're headed into July here, so your fantasy drafts are going to be starting before you know it. Stick with us. We will guide you to another fantasy football championship. Thanks for watching, folks, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Seasons change. Spring training slides into the regular season. Summer cools into fall. Leaves change their color. Lives change their shape. Change is life's only constant. AAA Insurance is here to be your guide through life's journey. Protect what matters most. Make sure you have the right insurance for whatever season of life you're in. Talk to your local AAA insurance agent today. Visit AAA.com for details.
Metro by T-Mobile has the best deal in wireless. Switch to Metro and get 2 lines for just $80 with Amazon Prime included. All month, every month. Plus, now get 2 free Samsung Galaxy J7 Star phones. Get the best deal in wireless today. Only at Metro. Plus sales tax and activation fee. $50 plus rate plan required. Not valid for members currently on T-Mobile network or on Metro in past 90 days. Offer subject to change. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Amazon Prime has a $12.99 per month value. Eligible port required. Restrictions apply. See store for details and terms and conditions.